Welcome back, everybody. It's another episode of Life Coach Labs. I'm your host, Chris Angel. I'm here with my guest today, my friend, Aaron Hendon. Hello, Aaron.
Hi, Chris.
It's always great to hang out with you. That almost felt like a pirate thing there. Har,
Chris. Arr.
Hello, Aaron. We were just talking before we hit record here about leadership and humanity and all the things. And so, without I want a little context so people can relate to you that way, but then let's kind of pick up where we left off and dive into this conversation. So, what do people need to know about you to be related to this conversation of you and leadership?
Well, let's see. So, I'm a managing broker of a team in Seattle, right? One of the best
For real estate
team in Seattle, and have been leading programs and educational courses for a company called Landmark for 27 years. Yeah, a long time. Thousands and thousands of people in developing their leadership. And just been around and interested in human development, human transformation, human development, what it takes to make a difference for others. And I think if you're talking about leadership, you really are only talking about making a difference for people. I mean, I suppose you could be talking about leadership in lots of different contexts now that I'm thinking about it, but I'm only interested or engaged with what it is to impact the quality of the life for another.
Right. I think that's there's a breakdown. I think that happens when I look at coaches that I've coached, where we get into coaching because we want to help people, we want to serve people, we want to help heal people, a very healer mindset, which I think is distinct from a leadership mindset. I think it's one thing to be a healer, a supporter. It's another thing to put yourself out front and lead. What do you see in the difference between those?
Well, there's for sure an overlap, right? I mean, I don't think there's two separate domains. And maybe I haven't really thought about it before, so we'll figure it out as we talk. But I mean, it could be a front of the hand, back of the hand kind of thing too, where they're distinct, but they come up together. Like how much? No, I don't think that's true. I think you could actually be there just to heal people, just to listen. My wife is a therapist like that. She does emotional freedom technique and does consultations, and it's not a leadership conversation at all for her. So there's healers like that, therapists, people that really just do listen and provide from whatever their paradigm is they see as missing that could impact. But then when you're talking about leadership, what I hear and the way I would put it is, you're in front and you're either you're leading the way in a very real way. You're leading the way for where you're interested in the person that you're leading to step into. Look, in a lot of different contexts, there's leaders and then there's followers. That's sort of the dominant paradigm of leadership. I follow this particular this thought, or I'm in the leader of a political party has people under them, and there's a hierarchy. But I think when you're talking about life coaches, and I think you're talking just knowing you, Chris, and knowing the people that you would attract, we're talking about leaders that are interested in empowering people to be leaders. So we're not interested in followers, We're interested in developing leaders. And I think that's something to get clear about. If you're going to be a coach of any kind, are you interested in developing leaders?
Yeah, I want to speak to that, because I think it would be easy. And listen, there's no judgment about if you're the kind of coach listening to this who wants to, as a practitioner of healing, bring people to wholeness. That's perfect.
Awesome.
That's amazing. And there is an additional piece I want to challenge. That is, like, if you're here to change the world, like if we get into our soul and out of our intellect, I think our souls are expansive. I think we would, if somebody said, how many people do you want to help in this lifetime? You would say as many as possible.
Right.
Because you're not stingy with the gifts you've been given. Like you have an expansive heart for people. So you would say as many as possible. But then you start to overlay, well, what do you have to do to get there? And cultural paradigms of leadership with leaders and followers and pedestals and not. And then that's where you pull back as a coach and you say, well, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. But if I said, how many people do you want to help? You'd say as many as possible. And to me, that's a leadership conversation.
Say a little bit more about that. So what do you, when you say, how is that connected to a leadership conversation? It's a little bit of a leap for me. So
sure. Yeah. I think that if you're going to reach more people, you need to be engaging leaders. You need to be developing leaders.
Okay.
As a coach, if I'm going to coach
right.
10 people over here who aren't leaders or aren't wired for leadership or aren't interested in it, and 10 people over here are interested in leadership, same amount of effort on my part, same conversation, same distinctions, but working, coaching, healing leaders is going to have a exponential groundswell.
Yes.
Than working with people who are in a dead end of life and just got the wholeness, but don't want to do anything with it.
Yeah, good. Well, I totally get that. I 100% agree. And the thing I would challenge about it and, to take on is that there's no difference between those 10 people, that all people, if you empower them, would in fact lead. That if they got restored to wholeness and completeness, there's no genetic makeup that makes someone a leader. There's literally nothing about a leader that's any more than their commitment is expressed. And that's it. That's the only, everyone wants to make a difference. Everyone wants to make a difference.
So you could say, based on how you're describing that, like your commitment to express, your commitment to show up, that is leadership.
Yeah. I mean, in a real way, it's that Marianne Williamson quote, but in a real way, when you shine, when you let your light shine, you encourage others to shine. When you get to a quantum physics level, right?
Yeah.
There's no separation between me and you.
Right.
We're the same stuff.
Right.
So, you can get as woo as you want about it. And your leadership being expressed is in fact expressing the possible leadership of what it means to be human.
Which is so great because we've sort of backdoored our way into this thing about, like, if we go back to Kale, we go back to your wife for a minute, like then in fact, she is leading. Like, in fact,
yes,
her commitment to express, her commitment to show up for those she serves is in fact leadership. So, I mean, it's kind of where I wanted to get to, because you as a life coach listening to this are leading.
Yes.
But when I use the word leadership, you think you're not. And so you don't take challenges. You think leaders are the ones who are on the mountaintop, right? Like you said earlier, the titles of things and I'm an influencer, I'm a YouTube champion that has 1 million subscribers. Like, we have these connotations for it, and your willingness to show up and do stuff in the world, I think, shifts when you see yourself as that expression as a leader.
It's funny you say it that way, Chris, because I think everything you said is right. And the current model, though, the way it looks, the way it's presented is, you can't really we judge our effectiveness in leadership by the number of followers on social media, for example. Right. I mean, we think of ourselves, I'm not really a leader. Why? Because I don't have anyone, my social media following is teeny, or versus that's a metric for sure. It's a metric. It measures a reach for sure. It does, but does it really speak to who you are as a leader? Yeah. Is it, this is, again, now we're full circle to the thing I started with before we started recording.
All right.
Right. Like for all us coaches and people out to make a difference that aren't members of the Double Comma Club.
Right.
Are we really, do we just need to be selling supplements so that we know ourselves as leaders? And that would convince me that I'm a leader because I have a plaque from Russell Brunson. Right. But that's definitely dovetails in there.
Right. That reminds me a little bit of transference, the concept of transference.
Tell me about that.
When a guru sets things up in a way, whether they do it on purpose or not, doesn't really matter. But the process of transference, where I'm the guru, you're coming to sit at my feet and learn from me. So because you don't know, but I do know, because I'm the guru who's seen, it all. And at some point, the whole process of transference is you are in essence giving me your power, your loyalty, your whatever, until you learn that you didn't need it in the first place, that ultimately you are the source of your own
Right.
power. And now there's the transference of power from me, your guru, to you owning your own power, which you never needed from me. Anyway,
it's all wrapped up in that, I mean, it's the whole world of, that Brene Brown dives into so clearly around imposter syndrome and what it is to own. And I think that's such a deep well, such a useful inquiry for people to deal with. And you can't, I mean, I can't listen to it enough to really start dealing with, that your leadership, my leadership is a function of the stand you take on your leadership, that it cannot be driven by, it cannot be defined as, or designed by the metrics or whatever random arbitrary metrics we come up with. It's got to start with the stand that you take, that your life makes a difference for people, that you're going to make that difference for people. It really is directly connected to what we were talking about earlier.
Right. I think a lot of people, a word that has come up in the last several years of working with life coaches has been people looking for permission. There's this external looking for, is it okay if I do this? Can I do this? And I remember a couple of years ago, a nurse, she was a nurse, giving an example of, if the building had collapsed that we were in, you as a person in that scenario wouldn't wait to say like, hey, can I help this person over here? Or does anybody give me permission? Or do I need a certification in order to help people? You would just go, hey, are you okay? Are you okay? Somebody help this person. It would just be instinctual. And that would by definition be you leading, like a stand for, you would be a stand for people's well-being in that moment.
That's right. You'd be leading people to safety. I mean, that's how
that's what we're doing.
That's what we're doing. And and then there's the context in which, you're removing barriers from people's performance so that they can discover themselves as leaders. And there's all the modalities you could use. You could be a coach and, have them double their business. And now they have the wherewithal to, to think of themselves that way. But it's a trap to think that you need a double comma and then there's leadership. Or you need that many followers and then there's leadership. Leadership is where you start, not where you get to.
And I think it's interesting to watch the trend of the amount of life coaches who are entering the industry. It's it's not regulated. A lot of people have gotten into coaching. And I think in some ways, it dilutes the industry in the sense of like how the public relates to life coaches then is like, I've seen some comments like life coaching as an industry is like network marketing because it's everybody teaching everybody how to be a coach. Like, hey, be a coach. I'll teach you how to be a coach and you go teach others how to be a coach. And there's this dumbing down of what it is we do as an industry. But I think some of that is simply because people aren't leaning into the stand they are. So what happens is they try to do life coach, they try to do marketing, and none of it comes from conviction or the stand they are. It all comes from trying to do it right and make money, which brings us back to supplements. Like we just go sell some supplements, but
I mean, there's that, and then and God bless people that sell supplements. I mean, whatever, same deal. I mean, if that's see, I mean, it's funny because we have this thing about selling out. Everything comes back to a Grateful Dead metaphor for me, but Bob Weir, one of the guitar players for the Dead, was commenting about how they tried to sell out their whole career. They just never, they were like, sell out? Are you kidding? We've been trying to sell out for years. It's and yet at the same time they wound up. I mean, it's the, crazy story, if you get into it, but they wound up, developing a model
Hmm.
They developed a freemium model, and it was literally courses at Stanford on freemium,
Wow.
and they used the debt as a case study.
Yeah.
But wound up being that way, but they had been trying to sell it. So we talk about selling out with supplements as if that would be some terrible thing to do, versus, hey man, if you have a supplement that you believe in, go for it, dude. That's,
Yeah.
go do it.
I mean, that's the whole point. It's not the product, it's the stand you take. So
Yeah.
if, and by the way, our snarky commentary on supplements is a direct trickle down from people who got into supplements without a stand and were like, hey, do you want to buy this supplement? You want to buy the supplement?
Yeah.
It diluted the respect for supplements, because now it's just a joke. And it's not a joke because the supplement's a joke. It's a joke because of the way people were being about selling supplements, which is the same for coaching. Like, coaching is on a cusp of becoming a global joke because people don't take your stand seriously because you don't see yourself as a leader.
It's a really interesting way to look at that. Yep. Yeah. I mean, and as you do develop yourself in your expression as a leader, you can begin then to start to create different metrics for yourself, right? That work, right? Like how, whatever it is for you. But it's not even, the metrics got to come as an expression of your leadership, not evidence of.
Yeah.
Right. It's not evidence of your leadership. It's your expression of leadership is going to be, you're going to make up the metrics for whatever it is for you. And then your job is really to empower others to become leaders, and you can start to measure that. But I think that's the only game in town.
I think one of the things that you bring to this conversation, if we go there for a minute, is these 27 years of leading programs for Landmark Education. And in that, what's the Landmark's name now? Is it Landmark?
Landmark World, or just Landmark now?
Landmark. So in Landmark, you've got people who are learning how to lead an introduction to Landmark Forum, or lead other programs. And I went through that program years ago, as did my wife. And there was you start with
that's how we know each other.
That's right. That's right. And you start with a format, what you call format, which is basically, what do you say?
A script. Yeah.
A script. Yeah. What do you say? And I think in life coaching, if we try to make the parallel for a minute, in life coaching, you as a coach have learned some tools for how to coach people. Or if you take it into marketing, you've learned some things about marketing and how to post on social and whatever. And there is this script. It's not exactly like these exact words, but there is a way that's being taught of how to do it. What I felt when I went through the Introduction Leaders Program, and what I noticed from people is, there in the beginning, when they're learning it, they don't own it. There's not a stand. I can't find my stand in it because my head is in trying to learn the thing I'm studying. What I'm curious from what you've seen, what is the moment that shifts from me relating to this script, this way of doing something as not mine, to having a stand for it being mine? Like, what do you notice in that?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying, and I think people have a stand in that. I think what they're not, what the shift happens was when they get themselves to the source of it. Yeah. That is, they've discovered it in their own life, and they're sharing it, they're talking about it, they're creating it, not as a script, but as, look, I would talk about this anyway. Like this is, so whatever it is, your modality for leadership. I mean, that's, the modality that we were talking about is one, the transformation provided by Landmark is a modality. But whatever yours is as a life coach, whatever you are expressing to your people, it's got to be something you've discovered. It's got to be something you are, not something you're saying.
Yes.
It's got to be that simple. And that's where it shifts for people, is when they stop delivering a format, a script, when they stop delivering something and they start expressing who they are. The most reliable indicator that I didn't get the job done when I'm leading those programs is someone comes up to me and they say, that was a great presentation.
Right.
The most reliable way to know that I did not get it done is they listened to it like a presentation.
Mm.
And because it didn't impact their life, because I was presenting something, and you got to move beyond delivering data to impacting people's lives. And you can only do that if it's who you are. There is no set of data, no pithy slogans, no great PowerPoint
Right.
that's going to make the difference. But now we're back in the conversation for you've got to be a stand for making the difference with people.
And there's a path. I think you could deconstruct how people get to embodying it as that, like it's who I am. I can see it. I'm just curious what you say. I see it as something super practical, but how do people get from it being a presentation to something that they are?
Well, there's an entire 7-month program Landmark offers that actually directs people to do that. But if you were talking about you meaning the life coaches that are listening, your modality, how do you get there? You've got to be really disciplined with yourself to be present to your life in a way that has what you'd be coaching people on show up for you. Right. In other words, you couldn't be selling supplements you don't take. You couldn't be, you'd have to be fully engaged with the questions you're asking your clients to be engaged with. You'd have to be personally discovering it. And the barrier to entry there to a lot of people is just being present, is just being, in fact, aware of what it is what world you woke up into. What's it like to be you now? And then are you being used by that which you're creating with people? You got to go discover it. It's nothing that you and I can talk about here. And, the Landmark program is 7 months of practice of that, but it's a lifetime of practice. I've been practicing for 27 years.
And I think that's the practical piece I see to it. Like there's 2 pieces to it. So the overarching process to me is showing up and doing it. It's practice. It's 7 months of practice. It's a whole lifetime of practice, and not practice from where I'm sitting about leading, not practice in the practice of the practicing of being a coach with a client. It's in the practice of those leading people before they get to you hiring you as a coach. It's how do you lead a conversation in the world before they ever get to you? Because I don't think any coach here has a problem once they're with a client. The thing I think I'm trying to point to in this lab on leadership is everything we do before they hire us as a coach. How do you lead before they hire you as a coach? Because that's where we tend to shrink. So there's 2 parts to that. I think one is, like you said, waking up every day and in the practice of getting present to what is my life as a leader? Who am I today about this stand I am in the world? Because that will impact what actions you take. And then, so that's a personal you doing it with yourself. And then there's the second piece, which is how does that trickle out then to the world, to the public facing? Because like if we go back to the ILP, the International Leader Program, there's a part where, you're with the script and you're reading it by yourself. Nobody's there. You're just internalizing it over and over and over and over again. And then you have a chance to practice with other people and fail forward and look like an idiot and be like, people say nice presentation, and until you practice it enough with others that you embody that which you are.
Well, there's those 2 pieces. Okay. So there's in fact practicing delivery. Okay. You could say that's all practicing delivery is learning the material, but for the life coaches we're talking about, you're not talking about learning some outside material. You're not delivering someone else's material. You're delivering your own material.
Perfect.
This is stuff you've developed. Good. So you've developed this to make a difference. So you do need metrics so that you can see, is it impacting the lives of your clients, so that you can, because you would say, if this were communicated to this person, what results would I see? Right. It's otherwise you're just going to be left with, how do I feel that session went, which is a crazy, stupid metric to use. I feel good. Okay, great. Right.
I love your rants on metrics. It's so good. Yeah.
Well, it's just without metrics, you can't, what's the point?
Yeah.
but you got to know that the point's not the metrics.
Right.
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 And that messes people up. People think the point is getting to double commas. No, the point is making such a big, enormous difference that people will pay you double commas to make that difference.
Yes.
But that, it starts with the premise, I think a lot of people miss that it starts with the premise that as you wake up in the morning, you as a life coach or you as your clients or anyone you're coaching, as you wake up in the morning, there's got to be a gap between the way you wake up and where you're intending to go. Otherwise, why coach someone?
Right. They would be.
You're already the coach that's going to get you to the same place you were yesterday. You don't need a coach for that. Right. So you've got to be really present to what is the gap you're creating, because there is no gap created. But I wake up because I have to pee. There's no gap created. I mean, I suppose that's a gap. And then once I pee, what am I going to do with my day? Right. So you got to be present to you're creating the gap for yourself that you're at. Then you can create a gap for other people. But there's no creating a gap for other people if you don't have a gap for yourself. You're just waking up, doing your thing.
It's really interesting. If I think about a lot of coaching comes from a place of like, let's get people to wholeness. So a lot of the conversation of coaching is from this place of wholeness. And it's, I don't know how you said that to me, made me feel like I don't want to create a gap. I'm trying to close the gap. And so it'd be hard. So it would be hard to think.
Well, you could say there's the gap. The gap is the gap is between you and whatever you say is whole and complete, but you've got to be the one that says it, it's not some external, like there's no, you're not really damaged. There's no real, it's not, you could say it, and then from there you go, okay, well, what would it take to complete this gap? And then that becomes the gap that you're living into.
And isn't that kind of the whole point of like in a game, we could just all say nothing is wrong right now. There is no gap. There's nothing wrong right now. So, the coaching industry just died. Like the whole coaching industry just completely became irrelevant because there's really nothing wrong in the scheme of consciousness. Like it just is what it is. And somehow you chose to be a coach because you saw something that you wanted to be different than it is. You signed up for a game to play called Here's Where We Are. Here's Where I Want Us to Go. And you stood in the gap for when you created that gap, and then you stood in the gap to help others get to that world you sought to create.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just because you create, that's a whole different world, right? Just because you created a gap doesn't mean the where it is wrong. Just because you woke up, there's no less perfect rose in nature. It's all perfect the way it is, and it isn't the way it isn't. And then from there, you can actually create a gap. Otherwise, you're just fixing and changing and trying to make things better, which is always going to just be some incremental improvement of the past. And you're always going to have the past linger around so you can compare how much better it is now than it was. And you're always living in that world where there's a past that's shaping the way you see life, which is, again, not a problem if you're okay with dragging the past around with you. Right. But if the alternative to that is, okay, wake up in the morning. All right, what's my life going to be about today? Not from there's something wrong with what it would, nothing wrong with having a pee in the morning, but after that, what is my life going to be for today? And that's a question that if you don't confront that question, then there is no leadership, and there's really nothing to coach people in. Right. There's nothing to do.
Yeah. So good. Wow. Well, we could talk forever. I just really enjoy where you come from. Like that, you and I didn't rehearse this, and it wasn't like, hey, here are the 5 talking points I want to have, but that you and I could have this type of a exchange, a dialogue around, and then just kind of my point, like you and I are leading a conversation that you and I haven't practiced or foretold. Like there's nothing like, and yet we're exploring leadership in some ways is exploring what we are to stand for.
Yeah. And then there's be things that come out of this conversation that will probably be worth practicing, but that's because something just opened up in a willingness to look,
Right.
you know, to create a gap. Like, where is there a gap between me waking up and saying, what's my life going to be for today? I was left with, wow, am I really in the presence of and really dealing with what my life is going to be about today? Or am I doing a little bit better than what I did yesterday? And frankly, the answer is always I'm doing a little bit better than I did yesterday. I mean, until I create something, it's always just going through the motions of what I did yesterday. And it takes an enormous amount for me. I don't know what it's like for anyone else, really. I think for me, for sure, it takes an enormous amount of discipline for me to stop and breathe and really take a minute and create what's my day going to be for and what's this next moment going to be for.
Yeah.
That's a practice for me.
Well, and then, you know, and now I call it throwing your hat over the wall. And for me, it does take that type of discipline. And what helps me is if I put myself in an environment where I have to chase my hat now, because now I'm on the conveyor belt of it. So even in the days when I don't want to do it, like somehow I'm still doing it because I set it up that way.
Totally.
You know?
Yeah. It's absolutely a great structure.
Yeah.
Great structure, throwing your hat over the wall.
Well, thank you, friend, for this conversation. If people want to learn more about, well, first of all, what you do in real estate, but then if any of you listening have real estate friends, like Aaron, I love what you're doing with you're leading a conversation in the real estate space about agents finding their own agency, not a brokerage, but like their personal power, like, how do people learn more about you and all that you're up to?
Yeah, well, they can just go to I have one sort of capture page. It's aaronhendon.work. So you can go over there and you can see all about, you get access to everything, you know, my team, real estate, like that. People want to know about more Landmark, they go to landmarkworldwide.com.
And you have a show out, right? You have a podcast?
We have a podcast, Agency for Agents, and that is really designed for team leaders and broker owners out to empower their teams. You know, the whole idea for me, and this is funny because I'm just sort of continually developing the conversation, and a lot of it was out of what we talked about the other day, was, you know, you could either in life, in my business, you can either be an agent. You know, I'm the agent of the designated broker in my state. That's right. Technically and legally who I am. I am the agent of the designated broker. Or I can have agency and have a say about how my life goes. And those are distinct. I'm either being someone else's agent in life, or I am creating my own agency, you know, having a say in the matter of my life. And those are two distinct places to stand that I've just started exploring. So
I love that. That's such a great way to cap a conversation about leadership, because I think that really captures it, you know.
Great.
Thanks, friend, for being here. And
my pleasure.
Yeah. See you next time.
All right. Bye.
Well, that's it, gang. Thanks for listening to this episode of Life Coach Labs. Before I let you go, I want to invite you to two things. One, there is a companion Facebook group to this show called Life Coach Labs. Go to Facebook and search Life Coach Labs. You can see it here on the screen. If I scroll through, this is a companion group to the show. Because it gives me a chance to get to know you. I want to know you as much as you listen to me and my guests. I want to know you. I want to hear about your important work. I want to support you. So please head over to Facebook and join the free Life Coach Labs Facebook group. Number two, let's jump over to the next window here. If you are looking to create recurring revenue in as little as 4 hours a week, I have documented my community model, right? How do you do community? How do you build a membership model for your coaching that incubates the people you want to serve and do it in as little as 4 hours a week? You can head over to lifecoachlabs.com/model. You can see it right here on the screen, lifecoachlabs.com/model, and learn more about how to create recurring revenue in as little as 4 hours a week. Thanks for hanging out with me in this episode. And until next time, be well.